Uthman is the ambassador and he's been killed, that's an act of war. We will retaliate against that as an act of war. And so we will go fight with the Meccans. And by the way, you're going to fight Meccans in their own territory, most likely you're all going to get killed. Which is why some Sahaba said this bay'ah, this pledge, was a pledge to the death. Others said, no, this was a pledge to get justice, but it means the same thing. It boils down to the same thing. So, and this pledge will also be mentioned in, guess what surah? Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een, amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. So far I've spoken to you about two people that came to try to negotiate with the Prophet ﷺ. Neither of them were from Mecca. So the first of them came from the tribe of Khuza'a, Budayl or Badil. And then the second one, Urwa, was one of the elite leaders of the Taif region. He was a Thaqafi. So he came and his negotiations, as we saw, failed. And at the end of it, and even though he left offended, he was also kind of overwhelmed by the unity of the Muslims and the way they honor the Prophet ﷺ. So he demonstrated that to the Quraysh and let them know, listen, you guys don't have anything on these people. They are far more unified and far more powerful and far more loyal to their leader than you guys can even imagine. So the better thing for you to do is let them quietly make their umrah and leave. That's the smarter play for you. I mean well for you. But they dismissed his advice. The third thing that happened was the Prophet ﷺ thought that maybe sending someone from Medina, because you know the Quraysh primarily have a problem with the Meccans, right? The Meccans who left, the Muhajirun. So maybe sending a Muslim in from Medina might be neutral and they might be willing to speak with him. So they send Khirash bin Umayyah al-Khuza'i and they recognize the camel and they beat him up. And they basically beat him up, and then somebody recognized that he's from their tribe and he let them go. He was actually not a Medinan, but he was from Khuza'a also. So he got let go and he came back, meaning no conversation happened. So now there's been two attempts from the outskirts and one attempt from the Muslims, but no conversations are moving forward. But then what happens is another side, so one side is Ta'if, Khuza'a, etc. Another side, neighbor, is actually the Kinaan region, the Kinana. And one of their big leaders is Al-Hunais. I know there's a lot of names, but it's important to remember some of these names because this one's actually pretty significant. His name is Hunais. And Hunais, what you should know about him is he has a lot of respect for the Kaaba. And he's a religious guy. So even you could be pagan, you don't believe in Islam, but you can still be religious. And part of his religious outlook was he had a lot of respect for the Kaaba and the rituals of the Kaaba. And a lot of the rituals of the Kaaba, you should know for your own knowledge, even the non-Muslims that were doing pagan worship at the Kaaba, a lot of that pagan worship was just the deformed version of what Ibrahim alayhi salam taught originally thousands of years ago. It just went through many mutations and it became this pagan thing. But some of the stuff that was in there was actually still original. Like they were doing tawaf, and tawaf was something taught to Ibrahim alayhi salam. At-ta'ifin wal-akifin ar-ruka' as-sujud. They were still sacrificing the animals. And the sacrifice of the animal was taught to Ibrahim alayhi salam. So even though they had a lot of shirk, if you peel off the layers of the shirk, behind it were actually remnants of the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam still, right? So, and part of those are common to Islam. The Muslims brought animals to sacrifice. The mushrikun also used to have animals to sacrifice. Why is that the common thing? Because we are restoring the legacy of Ibrahim alayhi salam, and the mushrikun have bits and pieces from that legacy that they're still holding on to and mixing in a lot of their corruption with it, right? So Hunais has a lot of respect for the Kaaba. He has a lot of reverence for the animals that are being brought for the sacrifice, etc. The Prophet ﷺ sees him coming from a distance, and he knows that the people of Kinana, they are more religious in that way. So فَقَالَ رَجُلٌ مِّن بَنِي كِنَانَ دَعُونِي آتِيهِ. So one of the people of Banu Kinana, Hunais, said, let me go talk to him. So he told the Quraysh, listen, the Taif thing didn't work, other places didn't work, I'm a religious guy, I'm a softer person, I'll go speak with them, let me see if I can make sense with them. فَقَالُوا إِئْتِهِ. So they told him, go talk to this man, Muhammad. فَلَمَّا أَشْرَفَ عَلَى النَّبِي صَلَى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ وَأَصْحَابِهِ. When he came to approach the Prophet ﷺ and the companions, قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم هذا فلان وهو من قوم يعظمون البدن فابعثوها له فبعثت له. So he said, this is a person, they have a lot of respect and regard for animals that are supposed to be sacrificed for religious reasons. Now, did the Muslims bring their animals? They brought their animals. So he said, even though he's approaching, why don't you do this? Take all the animals that are meant to be sacrificed, put them in front of us. So the first thing he's going to see is he's not going to see the Muslims, he's going to see the animals that are supposed to be sacrificed, and he has respect for that already. So he's like, oh, they're here on a sacred pilgrimage? These are sacrificial animals. And as he got closer, وَاسْتَقْبَلَهُ النَّاسُ يُلَبُّونَ, and as he came closer to the people, he noticed that the people were doing talbiyah. لَبَّيْكَ اللَّهُمَّ لَبَّيْكَ لَبَّيْكَ لَا شَرِيكَ لَكَ لَبَّيْكَ. They were remembering God. They were remembering Allah. So he's like, this is not war. These people are here to worship God. They brought their animals for the sacrifice. That's why they're here. Why am I here to negotiate with them? فَلَمَّا رَأَى ذَلِكَ قَالَ سُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ. When he saw that, he said, you know, Subhanallah is said in classical Arabic when you see something blasphemous, when you see something that is an affront to God, something offensive to Allah. That's when you say Subhanallah. So when he says Subhanallah, it's almost like he's saying, God forbid, مَا يَنْبَغِي لِهَؤُلَاءِ أَنْ يُصَدُّوا عَنِ الْبَيْتِ. It's not okay for these people to be prevented from going to the house. This is wrong. These people shouldn't be here. They should have a right to go to the Kaaba. He hasn't even come to negotiate, and he became an advocate for the Muslims. So the guy from Kinana, Hudais. فَلَمَّا رَجَعَ إِلَى أَصْحَابِهِ. When he went back to his own people, meaning the Quraysh, قَالَ رَأَيْتُ الْبُدْنَ قَدْ قُلِّدَتْ وَأُشْعِرَتْ. He said, I saw sacrifice animals that have already been marked. This is a sacred journey. How are you stopping this from happening? فَلَمَّا أَرَى أَنْ يُصَدُّوا عَنِ الْبَيْتِ فَمَا أَرَى أَنْ يُصَدُّوا عَنِ الْبَيْتِ. I don't think they should be stopped from worshiping at the house. This is sacrilegious. This is blasphemous. This is a crime against the religion. Even though he's not a Muslim, he believes in the sanctity of the Kaaba. He believes in animals that are meant for the sacrifice. So based on that, even from his religious perspective, this is a crime against the religion. It's a spiritual crime. So they told him, اجلس فإنما أنت الأعرابي لا علم لك. They said, sit down. You're just a Bedouin. You don't know anything. So they basically insulted him. Hudais got upset. Now he's a neighbor to the tribe of the Quraysh, and he's now upset. غضب عند ذلك والله ما على هذا حالفناكم وما على هذا عاقدناكم. He said, I swear to God, that is not what we align ourselves with you for. We have taken an oath to be loyal to you, to be allies with you, but not on this. Meaning that our entire basis for being loyal to you is that you take care of the Kaaba and you give people the right to the Kaaba when they are they're coming for their religious reasons. You are depriving these people of their religious right. That is a violation of the treaty we have with you. Basically, this is his way of saying, you and I, your people and Kinana, which is right next door neighbor to the Quraysh, are no longer affiliated. We're cutting ties with you. So this was a political blow to the Quraysh also. وَالَّذِي نَفْسُ الْحُلَيْسِ بِيَدِهِ لَتَخُلَّنَّ بَيْنَ مُحَمَّدٍ وَبَيْنَ مَا جَاءَ لَهُ. He said, I swear by the one whose life is in my hands, meaning I swear to God, you will absolutely let Muhammad be and let him do what he came here to do. أَوْ لَأَنْفِرَنَّ بِالْأَحَابِيشِ نَفْرَةُ رَجُلٍ وَاحِدٍ. Or I will separate from you all of the neighboring tribes. I will convince all of the tribes to cut their ties with you. فَقَالُوا لَهُ مَهْ. They said to him, shut up. Now you know the word for shut up. It's mah. The Farsi shuma megan ma for biggie, right? So you say take something, you say ma. In Arabic you say ma means shut up. Which actually, and so in Farsi you say take this, you say ma. And in Arabic you say shut up. Which sometimes for kids it's the same, isn't it? Take this and shut up. Anyway, so they said ma. Kuf anna. Just stop talking to us, ya Hudais. حَتَّى نَأْخُذَ لِأَنفُسِنَا مَا نَرْضَى بِهِ. We're going to do whatever we want to do. Leave us alone. We have the choice to make. You're nothing. You're nobody. So basically, they now have alienated the Kinana tribe from themselves also. The Prophet ﷺ suggested that the first negotiator he sent got beat up from Khuza'ah. So maybe we should send someone who's harder to beat up. So we should send Umar bin al-Khattab. So the Prophet ﷺ nominated Umar bin al-Khattab radiallahu anhu to go in and negotiate on the Muslim behalf. And Umar said, listen, I have no tribal affiliations left inside. They will probably try to kill me. I'll probably take out more of them before they get to me. But this is not going to be a negotiation. I'm telling you that right now. Right? So he knew. He has no problem with it. But he's like, this is not going to be much of a negotiation. If you're okay with that, I'm good with it. Let's go. But in my opinion, if you want a negotiation, I think Uthman is a better option. The reason Uthman is a better option is because he is related to Abu Sufyan. And Abu Sufyan, for all practical purposes, is now the governor of Mecca, essentially the president, if you will, right? So he's cousins, or he's nephew to the president. So there's a closer relationship, and that's why it's probably a better chance they're not going to attack Uthman because he belongs to the governing family. So he has a better chance to negotiate. Okay, so with that in mind, they send Uthman radiallahu anhu. There's a gate before you get into the Mecca itself, proper Mecca, called Baldah. People stopped him at the gate. They wouldn't let him get through. But then he met one of his relatives, Abban ibn Sa'ad ibn al-As. So it was his cousin who's from the same tribe. He said, no, he's my cousin. Let him come in, let him come in. So through a connection, Uthman radiallahu anhu made it inside. Now, when he made it inside, he met with the leaders of Quraysh one by one. The Prophet ﷺ had also instructed him to meet with the prisoners of war. Muslims were being held captive in Mecca. So he told them to meet with them also. So he met with some of the people that were basically held back as hostages inside Mecca. He met with the leaders of Mecca one by one until he met with the presidential figure himself, Abu Sufyan, who's a relative of his, right? And Abu Sufyan basically told him, فَوَاللَّهِ لَا تُحَدِّثُ الْعَرَبَ عَنَّا أَنَّهُ دَخَلَ عَلَيْنَا عُنْوَ أَبَدًا. He said, listen, I will never allow the Arabs to say about us that we gave you even an inch. I cannot let that happen because, now let me pause here before I go further. I want you to understand why this is so delicate for Quraysh. They have fought with the Muslims before. 3 wars have already happened. Multiple other battles have already happened, smaller scale. But this is the first time they're about to negotiate, or there's even a thought of negotiating. And when you negotiate, you give something and you take something. And you don't negotiate. You know, you ever heard the phrase recently, we don't negotiate with terrorists, right? So if you're negotiating with them, you've already considered them a legitimate party. So you've been calling them terrorists all this time, and now you're negotiating with them and you're giving them an inch even. That means you legitimize them. And that means they are so powerful, they went from being criminals in your eyes to actually being a legitimate government in your eyes. You have to recognize their legitimacy by negotiating with them. And that would be a major loss and a major defeat for the Quraysh in the eyes of the larger public. By the way, they already told their neighboring tribe, Taif, we're not going to negotiate. Forget this. They already told Kinana people, we're not going to negotiate. They already told Khuza'a people, we're not going to negotiate. Get out of here, get out of here, get out of here. We're going to do what we want to do. We're not going to give them an inch. And now all of a sudden they're supposed to negotiate. So Abu Sufyan says, this is really bad for us. We're going to look weak. We're going to look like we don't follow through on our claims. And our press release is different from our actual policy, right? So the contradiction will come out and we're going to look like idiots in front of the world stage, right? Sound familiar? بينما نحن قافلون من الحديبية نادى منادى النبي أيها الناس البيعة والبيعة. I'll tell you what this hadith is about. So Uthman radiallahu anhu is inside and they say, hey, so do you want to make tawaf? He said, why should I make tawaf? I'm not going to make tawaf without the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I didn't come here for that. I came here to negotiate with you to let all of my people come and the Messenger of Allah come, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that made them want to hold Uthman back. So now it's been a long time. Now there's a different set of reports. Is it a few hours or is it a few days? We don't know. But Uthman radiallahu anhu was held back and no news from Uthman. Now what happens on the other side? We haven't heard from Uthman. The Muslims are camped out in Hudaibiyyah. No more fighting is happening, but we haven't heard from Uthman. And the way this plays out, I'm going to do an imaginary scenario for you. There's a couple of Sahaba sitting together and they're like, Uthman hasn't come back for a while. Yeah. I hope he didn't get killed. Somebody may have said, I hope he didn't get killed. 5 feet over this way. You didn't hear the whole conversation. You just heard the word killed and Uthman. You're like, hey, did you? I thought I heard Uthman got killed. Did Uthman get killed? I don't know. Maybe find out. So you go to somebody else. Hey, have you heard anything about Uthman being killed? No, I haven't heard. Let me ask around. And now the questions being asked. And enough questions being asked. A lot of people are saying Uthman got killed. Yo, everybody knows Uthman got killed. Uthman got killed. So what happens in a crowd, you overhear something, it travels, it travels, it travels, it becomes something else. Some of the younger people here probably know the game of telephone, right? I played the game of telephone in the old Bayna campus once. I had a bunch of kids, like 80 kids. And I said, telephone is you whisper in one ear, they whisper in the next, they whisper in the next, and you ask the last kid what they said, right? So I whispered in the first child's ear, Bob punched Joe. That's what I said to him, Bob punched Joe. And he's supposed to whisper that. And we went through 80 kids. By the time we got to the 80th kid, I said, what did you hear? He said, Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. It travels, it takes, nobody changed it completely. I don't know how that transformation happened, but somebody decided might as well spread khair. Now Rasulullah ﷺ is also getting worried, and the rumor is spreading to the point where he's convinced, and Allah, to test the believers, sent Jibreel alayhi to the Prophet ﷺ. Call the followers and make them take a pledge with you. Make them take a pledge with you. So he called. The Prophet ﷺ told one of his people to make a call to gather all the Muslims. بَيْنَمَا نَحْنُ قَافِلُونَ مِنَ الْحُدَيْبِيَّةِ. When we were settled in our caravan in Hudaibiyyah, نادى منادى النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام أيها الناس البيعة البيعة. The caller assigned by the Prophet ﷺ called, people, bay'ah, bay'ah, pledge, pledge, time to take a pledge. Pledge means you put your hand in somebody's hand and you take an oath. That's what a pledge is. That's what a bay'ah is. Okay? نزل روح القدس. The angel Jibreel came down. He's asking for a pledge. That's the announcement. The Muslims start gathering. So فسرنا إلى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وهو تحت شجرة ثمرة بايعناه فبايعناه. And we came to the Prophet ﷺ and he was under a tree and we took a pledge with him there. The pledge was to basically avenge Uthman. If he's been killed, we're going to avenge him. I know we didn't come here for war, but if you kill an ambassador, it's an act of war. Right? And if Uthman is the ambassador and he's been killed, that's an act of war. We will retaliate against that as an act of war. And so we will go fight with the Meccans. And by the way, you're going to fight Meccans in their own territory, most likely you're all going to get killed. Which is why some Sahaba said this bay'ah, this pledge, was a pledge to the death. Others said, no, this was a pledge to get justice, but it means the same thing. It boils down to the same thing. So, and this pledge will also be mentioned in, guess what surah? Surah Al-Fatih. Because all of this is going to be recorded in Surah Al-Fatih. Right now we're looking at the seerah sources and the hadith sources. Then eventually, hopefully tomorrow inshallah, we'll talk about how the Quran comments on all of this. Because there's a difference between when a Sahabi remembers something or the historian remembers something. It's different than Allah mentioned something. We should keep those two separate accounts, isn't it? That's divine perspective. So we're gonna deal with that separately, inshallah. Okay, so the Prophet ﷺ takes this pledge. Now they're ready to fight because there's already been an attempt to kill the Prophet ﷺ and to stir up the Muslims. Remember the 80 that came to start a fight? And now Uthman has disappeared. So they're ready to go get in there, right? And the Prophet ﷺ told them, Antumul yawm ahlu khayril ard. He told them, you are the best people on earth today. The Sahaba who took that pledge. Then he said, لا يدخل النار إن شاء الله من أصحاب الشجرة أحد الذين بايعوا تحتها. Allah, he said, by the will of Allah, nobody who took the pledge under the tree, not one of them will enter into the fire. Not one of them will enter into the fire. Okay. And then Hafsa radiallahu anha, she had recited this ayah, in وَإِن مِنكُمْ إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا. The Prophet ﷺ, she recited the ayah. What about the ayah that even every one of you will have to go over the fire? In Surah Maryam. Every human being will have to go over it like a bridge. إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا. And he said, وَنُنَجِّ الَّذِينَ اتَّقَوْا وَنَذَرُ الظَّالِمِينَ فِيهَا جِثِيًّا. And Rasul ﷺ recited another ayah, we will rescue those who have had taqwa. Right? So, and leave the wrongdoers in it. Okay. So, now, by the way, where is this tree? This is one of the great wisdoms of Allah. that they couldn't remember where the tree was when they came back. 1,400 people couldn't remember where the tree was. It was pretty amazing. And one person said, I remember exactly where it is, but I can't tell you because I'm blind. that was the wisdom of Allah. Because if Pakistanis went there today, I don't know if there would be a bigger crowd at the Kaaba or a bigger crowd at the tree. You understand? So one of the wisdoms of Allah is that the tree is gone, because that would have turned into something else. People would have had branches in their house. People would have had leaves. People would have tried to dig up the root. They would have taken the dirt. All kinds of stuff would have been happening because of that tree. You know? And so, and this is actually one of the ways in which Allah protected our religion from falling into shirk, because Tawheed falls into shirk over generations. That's what happened with Nuh alayhi salam. And unfortunately, at some level, that still happens with the Muslims. Muslims go to the Kaaba, and the security people check the purses and bags and everything, right? But sometimes people are very good at hiding their scissors. And they go cut out a little piece of the ghilaf Kaaba, and then they keep it in their house, and they're like, and then they make salah and weird stuff. Why? This is shirk too. Because we didn't go to worship the Kaaba. We didn't go to worship. The Kaaba is just a stone. And people are hugging the Maqam Ibrahim, you know, they're hugging the thing, you know, that's why they made it spiky. Because like, too many hugs going on. This is the way of the people, this is the way of pagan religions. If you notice pagan religions, they do these things, right? And Shaitan wants to introduce these practices back into Islam. And Allah did not let that happen with our religion. But some people are very adamant on bringing it back, so they'll bring it back one way or the other. In fact, there are places in South Asia today where the name Islam is there, but all the practices are Hindu. The name is Islam, but actually it's, you know, what they call in Texas, lipstick on a pig, right? It's through and through, it's shirk. There's nothing like close to Tawheed in it. They'll be doing sajda to other than Allah. They will be making dua to other than Allah. They will be calling on multiple others to protect them and save them. هَؤُلَاء شُفَعَاؤُنَا عِنْدَ اللَّهِ. All the things Allah mentioned that the mushrikun would do, you can find. And those people call themselves Muslim. They're calling themselves Muslim. You can call yourself whatever you want. You know, it is, filth is filth. You could spray perfume on it, it's still filth. You know? And so this is something Allah protected our religion from. And we have to protect ourselves from it. From the smallest of these things. Unfortunately, when the real religion disappears, then it's replaced with religious artifacts. That's the fact of it. Either you have the real faith. The faith is in the hearts, right? The Sahaba had Quran in their hearts, right? And then most of them didn't know how to read and write. And the ones who did know how to read and write, sometimes they wrote Quran on a bone. Sometimes they wrote it on a rock. If you were there and you saw Quran written on a bone, astaghfirullah, you'd put it somewhere on the top and protect it, put it in a glass case. This is what, this is the ridiculousness we have done. And as a result, now the Quran is not in the heart, but at least it's in the rear view mirror, right? There's an Ayatul Kursi in the rear view. There's a they have a micro mushaf. You seen the micro mushaf? You need a electronic telescope to read the micro mushaf. And you keep that in the car because, you might get bad transmission if you don't have that in the car. Or you don't have good airbags, so you put Ayatul Kursi and, What religion is this? You know what this is? This is the same as the Christians who put a crown in the back, or they put a crucifix, they hang a crucifix. You seen those things? These are the kinds of jahiliyyah that Islam came to destroy. But you know what we did? We saw other people do this. We saw other religions do this, and we say, hey, they have that. We can have it too. اجعل لنا الإلها كما لهم آلهة. The people told Fir'aun, the people told Musa alayhi salam, why don't you make us a god like those people have a god? That's what they said. Though other religions have it, we should have it too. They have amulets around their neck, we should have amulets around our neck. They tie things around their wrist, we should tie things around their wrist. They have temples, and they have saints, and they have holy people, and they have dua to them, and we should have that too. What's wrong with it? And so we adopted so many of these shirky practices, and we are totally okay with it. And This is the power of our religion. Our religion is the religion of Ibrahim alayhi salam. And Ibrahim alayhi salam's the entire principle of this deen is to destroy idols, objects. Objects are not sacred. The deen is sacred. Allah is sacred. The message of Islam is sacred, right? Today, the Muslims have more respect for a piece of paper that has Quran on it than the Quran itself. This is the tragedy of our time. They don't care what the ayah says. You don't care what the ayah says. You don't care what the Quran is saying, but you care that it's on a piece of paper. You should put it, should I burn it? Should I rip it? This is the concern. But you're ripping up its teachings in your family every day and you don't care. You're tearing up the Quran with your mouth every day, with your business every day. You don't care. Doesn't matter. But we got to respect the printed copy and put it in a nice shelf and all of that. This is what we've done. Subhanallah. And I'm saying jokingly, it's a blessing of Allah that the tree disappeared. It's a blessing of Allah. Had it not disappeared, whew, man, there would have been another tawaf going on around the tree. I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised, So, anyway, and by the way, if Allah wants to preserve something, He will preserve it, right? If Allah wants to preserve the Kaaba, which was buried under the ground for thousands of years, and Allah restored it from the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, through thousands of years of paganism, Allah can restore it, can't He? And when Allah wants something to disappear, He'll make it disappear. If He doesn't want you to know where the Ashabul Kahf were, He won't let you know. You can go visit Turkey if you like. And you can go to whatever tourist site you want. If He doesn't want you to know where the Ark of Nuh alayhi salam is, then you can go see some mountaintop and say, oh, it was over here. If Allah wanted you to know, He'll let you know. If you want to know where Ya'juj and Ma'juj are, stop trying to go to China. dig into the wall of China, see if they're there. If He wanted you to know, you would know. People trying to do an archaeological search on the wall of Dhul Qarnayn and all this. Stop yourself. What happens in our religion? One, we go towards shirk. Two, we become obsessed with the things that Allah did not mention for that purpose. I give this, it's a silly example, but it's important for you to think about this. A teacher is giving you a lesson, right? A business class, a business teacher, right? And he's got years of experience in business, but he decided at the end when he retired, he wants to teach. So he became a professor after being very successful in business. And he's giving a lecture on business and how to run the business. Where do you open your shop? How do you choose a location? How do you decide if that's reasonable rent? How do you pick the right product? How do you pick the right sales strategy? What's your marketing strategy? This, that, the other. He's describing all of these things. And one student raises his hand and says, but what color socks does he wear every day? And the other student says, yeah, but does the shoe and the socks match, or like which? And the professor's staring at this. What are you asking me? I just gave you priceless advice of 30 years of experience, business, and I gave you the story, the scenario, and you're asking me colors of socks? This is the only thing that came in your head? You know what that means? That student who's sitting there, his parents or her parents wasted a lot of money sending this kid to school. That's what that means. Because it's not that he's stupid, but his mind is in the wrong direction. He needs some mental readjustment before he can learn. The Quran does mental readjustment. The Quran tells us there were young people in a cave. Did Allah tell us how many? No, just some people say this, some people say that. They're like, oh, some people? I want to say it too. They had a dog? What kind of dog? Was it a Chihuahua? Because that would have been really small. I don't know. Maybe, what kind of dog was it? Did it have spots on it? And there are, in our history, some people who are obsessed with this question. There are people that are going to read the story of Yusuf alayhi salam and say, well, so what happened with Zulaykha? If Allah wanted you to know what happened with, you missed the entire surah, and all you got left is Zulaykha. What is wrong with you? What Quran? You know what we do? We read the Quran and we focus on everything that is not Quran. And then we call it Tafsir, our version. We're studying Quran. This is not Quran. This is a mockery of Allah's book. It's a mockery of Allah's book. And this is the reason I wanted to share these lessons with you about Hajj is because even the Kaaba, when I went, I try not to go too much to Umrah. It's a mix of reasons. I went to Hajj once. I probably won't go to Hajj again. If, I have my own reasons. But when I go to Umrah, it hurts. It just hurts. When I see people doing tawaf and taking selfies, you're there and you're still worshiping your own image. That's how I call it. I know some people are offended by that. I don't care. I don't care. You're in Allah's house where you're supposed to forget that the outside world exists. If Allah wanted you to be interested in the world, when you come to His house, He would have put the Kaaba in Hawaii. He would have put it in California, nicer weather. He would have put it in some resort island. He put it in the middle of a desert. Not a tree grows there, man. Burning heat. What is He telling you? Forget the world and come here. Don't come here to be a tourist. Don't come here for yourself. Come here for your Rabb. Labbaik Allahumma labbaik. You come answering your call. You're dressed in the clothes you're going to be buried in. You're rehearsing when we're standing in front of Allah in the haram. You know what an Arafah? You know what that is, right? That's a convention every year, which is a rehearsal for Judgment Day. Because we're going to stand in front of Allah on Judgment Day. And you're going there and you're like, yeah, I'm at the Kaaba right now. Check this out. Make dua for me, guys. You don't need idols to worship anymore. Yourself is enough. The worship of self. The worship of selfie is the worship of self. Subhanallah. Have you seen someone who takes their God and takes their own feelings and turns them into their God? That's what we've done with this religion. It deeply hurts. So, when you go, if you get a chance to go to Allah's house, I want you to remember these stories. I want you to remember the blood that was spilled. I want you to remember the pain that they went through. They weren't going on a tourist site. They weren't going to share their pictures. That's not what was on their mind. They were going towards death. And we get to go because they did this. None of us would even have the sight of the Kaaba if they didn't do what they did.